We turn now to Texas, where controversial Christian television CEO Marcus Lamb has died after his battle with COVID-19. The conservative televangelist making headlines this past year after his network Daystar dedicated hours of broadcast to anti-lockdown and anti-vaccination activists and groups. NBC News correspondent Maura Barrett has the story. They don't even know what is in the shop. Marcus Lamb, a broadcaster reaching hundreds of millions of people around the world and who vocally opposed the COVID-19 vaccine, died after battling the virus. He often spread misinformation on his network, which is one of the most popular channels with evangelical Christians in the country. They're giving shots to people that are already compromised with their immune system. His wife announcing the news of his passing on Tuesday. This morning at 4 a.m., the president and founder of Daystar and the love of my life went to be with Jesus. His son calling it the work of the devil. Hello, faithful brothers and sisters in the Lord. You know, sometimes we think we've heard the whole story, especially when it comes from a big respected platform. But every now and then something unexpected happens. A quiet voice speaks up, a new truth comes to light, and suddenly we're left rethinking everything we thought we knew. That's exactly what's happening right now with the story of Marcus Lamb, the founder of Daystar Television Network, a man who many looked up to as a pillar of faith and leadership in the Christian world. When he passed away, it shook people to the core. The official word was that COVID-19 complications took his life. For most people, that seemed believable. It was a tough time globally. Lots of lives were being lost. So no one questioned it at first, but fast forward to now, and Rebecca Lamb, Marcus's own daughter, is finally stepping forward with a truth she's held close for a long time. She's not just saying a few words. She's pulling back the curtain on what really happened. And honestly, the details are making people sit up and pay attention. Let's rewind a bit. When the news of Marcus Lamb's death broke, people mourned deeply. He had been a strong voice in Christian media for decades. He wasn't just another preacher. He was the heart and face of a huge Christian network. So when he passed suddenly, it was hard to accept. He looked fine. He was still preaching, still active, still leading. That's why his death didn't just feel sudden. It felt off. At first, everyone accepted the story that it was all because of COVID. But over time, whispers started. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic. Just small comments exchanged in quiet spaces that hinted something wasn't right. People close to the family, friends of the ministry, even longtime supporters began to ask, was there something more going on? Now Rebecca is finally addressing those whispers. She's coming out with details about her dad's health that were never made public. According to her, there were signs long before COVID ever showed up. There were health problems, stress, pressure, maybe even emotional battles that nobody saw. Or maybe people saw it, but chose to stay silent. What really grabs people is how long this silence went on. If Rebecca knew this for so long, why didn't she speak sooner? And maybe more importantly, what made her decide to come forward now? Well, from the looks of it, the truth was too heavy to keep locked away. As much as she loved and respected her father, Rebecca may have realized that keeping quiet was only feeding confusion. The world was creating its own stories, and she probably felt like it was time to finally share what really happened. No filters, no cover-ups. The part that's got people talking the most is how Joni Lamb, Marcus's wife and Rebecca's mom, responded to all this. When Rebecca started talking, Joni's reaction wasn't what many expected. Some people thought she'd be defensive or angry. Others hoped she'd come clean about the things she knew. But her actual response, it left folks puzzled. Was she in shock? Was she trying to protect the legacy of her husband? Or was there something even deeper going on? The Lamb family has always presented a united front, strong in faith, strong in purpose. But now it seems like cracks are starting to show, and that's not just affecting how people see them, it's affecting how people view Marcus's legacy too. Was he the man he appeared to be on screen? Was his death really just a health issue, or did something behind the scenes contribute to the way things ended? Some insiders say Marcus had been carrying a lot. Running a major Christian network like Daystar is no small task. It means constant meetings, travel, sermons, decisions. Add to that the responsibility of being a public spiritual leader. And you've got an enormous weight on your shoulders. It's not surprising that this kind of pressure could lead to physical health issues. But then there are darker rumors too, ones that go beyond just stress or illness. Some claim Marcus might have been dealing with financial problems or internal battles within the ministry. These claims haven't been proven, but they've added to the mystery surrounding his death, and the family's silence hasn't helped. There's also the emotional side of things. Imagine being in a family that millions of people watch on TV. Imagine losing your father suddenly and being told not to share how you really feel about it. For Rebecca, that silence may have become unbearable. Maybe she wanted to protect her mom at first. Maybe she wasn't ready to face the backlash, but something changed. And now she's not holding back. This whole situation is a powerful reminder that even people who seem like they have it all together, fame, faith, power, are still human. They still struggle. They still hurt. And sometimes they still hide things that they're too afraid to admit. Rebecca's decision to come forward isn't just about exposing secrets. It's about healing. It's about letting people see that the truth, no matter how painful, is better than pretending, because real faith doesn't mean hiding mistakes. It means learning from them. As the truth continues to unfold, many are waiting to see what Joni will say next. Will she defend her husband's memory at all costs? Or will she finally open up about what really happened behind closed doors? The Christian community is watching closely. People are asking real questions now, not just about Marcus's death, but about the way big ministries handle pain, pressure, and personal struggles. And more than anything, they're realizing that being a person of faith doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you're honest, even when it's hard. Whatever comes next, one thing's for sure. Rebecca's voice has changed everything. The silence is broken. The truth is out. And now it's up to everyone else to decide what they believe. We turn now to Texas, where controversial Christian television CEO Marcus Lamb has died after his battle with COVID-19. The conservative televangelist making headlines this past year after his network Daystar dedicated hours of broadcast to anti-lockdown and anti-vaccination activists and groups. NBC News correspondent Mara Barrett has the story. They don't even know what is in the shot. Marcus Lamb, a broadcaster reaching hundreds of millions of people around the world and who vocally opposed the COVID-19 vaccine, died after battling the virus. He often spread misinformation on his network, which is one of the most popular channels with evangelical Christians in the country. They're giving shots to people that are already compromised with their immune system. His wife announcing the news of his passing on Tuesday. This morning at 4 a.m., the president and founder of Daystar and the love of my life went to be with Jesus, his son calling it the work of the devil. When someone like Marcus Lamb passes away, especially so suddenly, it leaves a lot of people searching for answers on the surface. It seemed like a straightforward tragedy, another heartbreaking loss during the COVID-19 pandemic. But the more time passed, the more questions started to bubble up, and they weren't just coming from people outside the faith community. Even some of his closest supporters started to wonder if there was more going on behind the scenes than anyone was letting on. Marcus Lamb wasn't just a pastor. He was the face of a global Christian network, someone who spoke boldly about faith, healing, and righteousness. So when news broke that he had died due to COVID-19 complications, most people took it at face value. But over time, that explanation started to feel a little too simple. Whispers turned into conversations, conversations turned into rumors, and eventually people started looking closer. Some began to wonder if Marcus had been dealing with something deeper, something people couldn't see just by watching him on stage or on television. Depression, mental exhaustion, hidden emotional pain, things that don't always show up in sermons or camera appearances. Could he have been silently struggling? Was the pressure of leading such a massive ministry weighing on him more than anyone realized? Think about it. Running a global ministry like Daystar isn't just about preaching. It's about running a business, making decisions, handling staff, dealing with money, expectations, criticism, media, and more. Now, add in the weight of being a spiritual example for millions of people. And it's not hard to imagine how overwhelming that could become. Some people close to Marcus started saying that the stress might have gotten to him, that behind the scenes, he was battling more than he let on. As these rumors gained momentum, journalists and media outlets started digging. They began reaching out to people who knew Marcus. Former employees, ministry partners, even members of the church. They weren't just chasing gossip. They were trying to understand the bigger picture, what was really going on in the months leading up to his death. A few insiders claimed Marcus had been going to quiet private meetings with other high-profile Christian leaders. These weren't publicized. They weren't part of any known ministry events. And according to some sources, these gatherings left Marcus feeling drained spiritually, emotionally, maybe even morally. Was there something happening behind the scenes that pushed him past his limit? And this is where things got even more complicated. Some people started to wonder if Marcus had been trying to hold together something that was already falling apart, whether it was issues inside the network, financial pressure, or spiritual battles that no one else knew about. Was he carrying a load so heavy that it finally broke him down? Was the official cause of death just one piece of a much bigger puzzle? These questions didn't just come from critics. Even longtime followers of Daystar began voicing concerns. Some stood firmly by the Lamb family, believing that Marcus's passing was just a sad result of the pandemic. To them, digging deeper felt disrespectful. Marcus had been a loving husband, a father, a man of faith. Wasn't that enough? Why not honor his memory instead of poking around in places that were better left alone? But others felt the opposite. They believed that the Lamb family owed the public full transparency, especially after Marcus spent years in the spotlight preaching about truth and integrity. If there was something more to the story, why keep it hidden? And why not just be honest about what really happened? You know, that tension started showing up everywhere: churches, online forums, social media comments. Some people defended the family with compassion, saying grief is messy and private. Others demanded answers, saying the silence only made the whole situation feel suspicious. And it didn't help that when Joni Lamb did speak, her statement was short and carefully worded. She expressed sadness and grief, of course, but avoided giving any real details about Marcus's health or emotional state. She didn't mention any underlying issues. She didn't confirm or deny the speculation. She just kept it vague. That silence, it didn't sit right with everyone. Some thought maybe Joni was just heartbroken. After all, losing your partner, especially someone you've shared your life and ministry with, is devastating. But others wondered if she was holding back on purpose. Was she trying to protect Marcus's legacy? Was she trying to shield the ministry from scandal? Or was there something more personal that she wasn't ready to face? And so the mystery grew. One theory that really caught on was that Marcus's death wasn't just about COVID-19. People began saying it might have been a mix of stress, long-term health problems, and emotional struggles that had gone unnoticed. Others whispered that he might have been carrying guilt, maybe from past mistakes, maybe from secrets nobody knew about. Was it all just too much for him? It's important to understand none of this is about tearing down someone's character. Most people asking these questions still deeply respected Marcus. That's what makes it so emotional. They admired him, listened to him, trusted him. So now the idea that there might be hidden pieces to his story, it hurts. And that hurt is fueling the demand for truth. As of now, the Lamb family hasn't said much more. The longer they stay silent, the more people speculate. And while no one outside the family may ever know the full truth, the fact that these questions won't go away says something loud and clear. People care. They care about integrity. They care about honesty. And they care about knowing whether the people they follow are being real with them. The passing of Marcus Lamb will always be a moment that rocked the Christian community. But what happens next, how the truth unfolds, how the Lamb family chooses to respond, will shape how that moment is remembered. Was this just a heartbreaking loss during a global crisis, or was it something more? That's the question many are still waiting to have answered. And maybe the hardest part, even those closest to him might not fully know the answer either. My last night with Marcus at the hospital, I was taking care of him at around 3 o'clock in the morning. She said to me, she just looked at me in this dark room. I'm there serving. And she looked at me and she said, "Look what you have done to this family." I remember texting my mom saying, "I can't do this anymore. I told God, you feel the pain of my heart. Me and my child are ruining this family." And I said, "I know, my God, you're protective of me. You'll get me out of here." That was my last night. The next day, he died. Marcus Lamb wasn't just a familiar face on TV. He was a leader, a preacher, a businessman, and a man on a mission. When he started the Daystar television network, it wasn't just about creating a Christian channel. It was about building a platform that would reach millions with the gospel message. And he didn't just talk about his faith, he lived it. Every sermon, every show, every behind the scenes moment was driven by his belief that people needed hope. And that hope could be found in Jesus Christ. What made Marcus stand out from others in Christian broadcasting wasn't just his message, it was the way he delivered it. He had a way of talking that made people feel like he was sitting right there in their living room having a personal conversation. He was passionate, energetic, and incredibly driven. Whether you were watching him on TV or seeing him at an event, you could tell that he truly believed in what he was doing. His words carried weight, not because he tried to sound important, but because people could sense that his heart was fully in it. And then there was the growth of Daystar. What started as a small idea turned into one of the largest Christian television networks in the world. That didn't happen overnight. It took years of dedication, long nights, difficult decisions, and a lot of personal sacrifice. Marcus poured everything he had into that network. It became his life's work. But with success came pressure, lots of it. Running a ministry that big meant always being in the spotlight, always making big calls, and always being under the watchful eyes of critics and supporters alike. And Marcus didn't do it alone. From the very beginning, his wife, Joni Lamb, was right by his side. She wasn't just a supportive spouse. She was his co-leader, his partner, his other half in ministry. Joni wasn't someone who stayed behind the scenes. She was right there in front of the camera, leading programs, hosting events, and connecting with viewers in her own way. While Marcus had a bold and commanding presence, Joni brought warmth, empathy, and grace. Together, they made Daystar feel like a family. People looked up to Marcus and Joni, not just because of their work, but because of their relationship. To many, they were the example of a godly marriage, a couple that prayed together, worked together, and faced challenges together. They had children. They built a ministry from the ground up, and they kept their focus on faith throughout it all. Viewers saw them not just as leaders, but as role models for what love and commitment could look like. But just like any other couple, they weren't perfect. Behind the polished broadcasts and the public appearances, they were human. And being in a marriage, especially one lived so publicly, came with real struggles. The constant demands of running a ministry, making big decisions, managing a growing staff, and balancing personal life with professional responsibilities, it's a lot. It would be for anyone. As Daystar grew and the platform became more powerful, so did the pressure. It wasn't just about preaching anymore. It was about keeping the entire network running, staying financially stable, responding to critics, and navigating the challenges of being a high-profile Christian figure in a world that's constantly watching. That kind of stress doesn't just stay at work. It comes home with you. It affects your marriage. It affects your mental health. It affects how you see yourself. Marcus and Joni knew what it meant to be in the public eye, but that didn't mean they were immune to the toll it took. The demands of the ministry often pulled them in different directions. There were times when they were on separate schedules, handling different parts of the ministry, sometimes barely catching a moment together. And when your life is that busy, it becomes hard to prioritize personal time, even with the person you love most. Still, through it all, Marcus and Joni stood by each other. They supported one another through tough decisions, public scrutiny, and private heartbreaks. Their commitment to Daystar was matched by their commitment to one another. Even when things got complicated, they leaned on their faith, leaned on each other, and did everything they could to stay strong together. But the truth is, no matter how close two people are, no matter how united they appear in public, every relationship has layers. And when a couple spends decades building a ministry in front of cameras and under pressure, those layers can become even more complex. Marcus and Joni had shared victories, shared dreams, and shared purpose, but they also shared burdens, and some of those burdens stayed quiet, hidden beneath the surface, out of the spotlight, tucked away from the audience who saw only what the cameras allowed. People admired their love and their loyalty, but very few knew the full weight of what they were carrying behind the scenes, the responsibilities, the criticism, the exhaustion, the fear of letting people down. All of that can slowly build up, and even the strongest couples can feel the strain. Later in life, some of those hidden struggles began to show more clearly. The public may not have seen the private disagreements or the personal sacrifices, but those closest to them could sense that something was shifting. The perfect image they had built was being tested by the reality of what it meant to live such a public, demanding life. And while they never stopped showing love and respect for one another, it became clear that their journey, like anyone else's, was far more complicated than it first appeared. Marcus and Johnny built something incredible. They gave so much of themselves to their ministry, to their viewers, and to each other. But the cost of that life was high. And as their story continued to unfold, especially after Marcus's unexpected passing, people began to see that behind every successful ministry, there are real people with real emotions carrying real weight. And maybe that's what makes their story so powerful, not because they were perfect, but because they were real, because they tried, because they kept showing up for their mission, for each other, and for the people they were called to serve, even when it was hard, even when the cameras turned off. There's something that y'all need to always remember for the future of Daystar. It's about the cloud of God. The cloud of God represents the presence and the power of God. And there's so many, your mother just enumerated all these great churches in Metroplex that they used to be the number one church. But then when they didn't keep being led by the Holy Spirit, the cloud, the blessing, the favor moved on to another church. And we sometimes take that for granted. So if you want the blessing to continue on your life individually, on your marriage, then on your family and on Daystar, you've got to be continuously led and guided by the Holy Spirit in all your decisions, in your attitude, in the way you think. Someone who stood beside her husband with pride and purpose. Together, she and Marcus looked like the perfect team, a couple bonded by both love and a mission to spread their faith around the world. To those watching from the outside, Joni and Marcus had it all. A thriving ministry, a beautiful family, and a marriage that seemed unshakable. Their network reached millions of people around the world, and they were often celebrated as a power couple in Christian circles. But the truth behind the cameras was a lot more complicated. What most people didn't see was just how much pressure came with leading such a massive operation. Daystar wasn't a small ministry. It was a global empire that demanded constant attention. Joni wasn't just helping out. She was right in the middle of everything, co-hosting programs, making decisions, and staying deeply involved in the network's day-to-day operations. And all the while, she was also trying to be a supportive wife, a present mother, and a spiritual role model. That's a lot for one person to carry. Behind closed doors, things weren't as perfect as they appeared. The constant demands of ministry life, the nonstop media attention, and the pressure to always look put together started to weigh heavily on both Joni and Marcus. It wasn't just about running a TV network. It was about carrying the emotional weight of being under the public eye all the time. Every word they said, every move they made was being watched, judged, and talked about. Joni had always taken pride in standing by her husband's side, but over time, that pride started turning into pressure. Trying to keep up the image of the perfect Christian wife while also navigating a strained marriage started to wear her down. The more she poured herself into her work, the more the distance between her and Marcus grew. They weren't just losing touch emotionally, they were starting to live almost separate lives. Still married, still co-leading Daystar, but privately drifting apart. The cracks in their marriage didn't show up on television, of course. On screen, they still smiled, still prayed together, still looked like the couple everyone admired, but people close to them began noticing the change. The tension, the exhaustion, the silence in moments where there used to be laughter. Marcus, who had once been the vibrant, outgoing leader of the network, began to withdraw. He wasn't as present, not just with the ministry, but with his family too. And he wasn't talking about what was really going on inside. Joni, on the other hand, did what she always had. She kept pushing forward. She focused harder on the ministry, as if keeping Daystar strong would somehow hold everything else together. She worked longer hours. She stayed in front of the camera. She didn't show her pain. But that quiet decision to bury the emotional struggles only widened the gap at home. And their children felt it, especially their daughter, Rebecca. Rebecca had grown up in the spotlight. She watched her parents build an empire. She saw their passion, their commitment, and all the sacrifices they made to keep Daystar going. For years, she looked up to her mom, seeing her as this fearless woman who never backed down from a challenge. But as she got older, things started to look different. She started noticing how much time her mom spent at the network, how often the needs of Daystar seemed to come before the needs of their family. She started seeing how her dad, once full of life and energy, began to fade. He wasn't the same. He was tired, disconnected, and more distant than ever. And Rebecca began to connect the dots. She began to feel like the image they had been projecting to the world wasn't the reality she was living at home. For Rebecca, it wasn't just confusing, it was heartbreaking. She loved her dad deeply, and watching him retreat into himself was painful. It felt like the father she had always known. The man who had once been so strong was slowly disappearing. And while Joni had always been the rock, always the one in control, Rebecca couldn't help but wonder if her mom's drive to keep the ministry afloat had come at a cost. Had it cost them their closeness as a family? Had it cost Marcus his peace of mind? Those thoughts were hard to carry, especially as a daughter stuck between two parents who were admired by millions, but privately struggling in ways no one else could see. To the world, Joni was a success. She was running a global Christian network, keeping the ministry alive after Marcus's death, and still standing tall. But to Rebecca, that success looked different. It looked like late nights, unanswered questions, and growing emotional distance. There was a sense of betrayal, not because Joni didn't love her family, but because it felt like the work had taken over everything. Rebecca saw her mom's ambition not just as a strength, but also as a weight that crushed the things that mattered most. And when her dad passed away, all those unspoken feelings rose to the surface: the grief, the anger, the sadness. It all came pouring out. The man who had once been her hero was gone, and she couldn't help but wonder if it all could have turned out differently. From the outside, it still looked like the Lamb family had it together. People still tuned in, still admired Joni's strength. But behind the polished broadcast, there was a daughter trying to make sense of everything she'd seen. There was a family trying to heal in private while the world continued watching. And the questions didn't go away, not for Rebecca, not for the people who had followed the Lamb family for years. What had really been going on in that household? How much of it had been real and how much had been carefully managed for the public eye? These were questions without easy answers, questions that still hang in the air long after the cameras stopped rolling. We've given over all of our evidence over to multiple reporters, including the police department. Daystar was contacted for a comment by the journalist Friday, November 15th. And then I was subsequently fired the following day, November 16th. Some scary things happened. Being followed, private investigators, intimidation.